First we'll talk about the first USS Albuquerque. It was a Navy ship named in honor of the Duke City. The hull number, which is kind of think of that as like its social security number. It's assigned at birth and it has it even after it's out of service. It was a patrol frigate and it was commissioned in 1943 and decommissioned in 1945. So as you can probably guess, it was played an active role in World War II, and it principally patrolled up and down the West Coast to escort cargo and troop ships all up and down the coast, all the way up to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Wasn't a terribly large ship by today's standards, about a little over 300 feet long, and only it was had light armament on it, but it had very successful 2 or 3 years running up and down the coast, providing protection and support for cargo that was necessary for the war effort. But today we're here to focus on the latest USS Albuquerque. That was the second U.S. Navy ship named in honor of the city of Albuquerque. It's a Los Angeles class fast attack submarine. And the way to think about that is a class of ships is they're anywhere from just a couple of ships to maybe 100 ships that have very similar characteristics, built from very much the same blueprints. They may have a few variations in capabilities and function, but they're essentially the same. So the hull number of the Albuquerque was SSN 706, and I'll define that for you. The SS means that it was a submersible ship. The N indicates that it was nuclear powered, and the 706 honors the founding of Albuquerque in 1706. And just one point of kind of tradition, submarines can be called ships or boats. I'm presuming, I don't know this for sure, but colloquially that began when with the first submarine that was acquired by the Navy in 1900, the USS Hunley. It was only 40 feet long and was barely seaworthy, but that's what started the course of the trajectory we were on to get to where we are today with some of the most advanced submarines in the world. So just real quick, primer on our current U.S. submarine classes. As I mentioned, the one at the top is the Los Angeles class. There were 62 of those that were built, and a lot of the older ones have been decommissioned. They were built between 1972 and 1996. Like I said, quite a few of them the older ones have been decommissioned. There's roughly 30 of those left in the fleet today. And just for reference, kind of the typical service life of a Navy ship is around 30 to 35 years. It might vary a little bit, 5 years, 10 years either way, but that's about average, which is actually pretty good because they take a lot of beating, and the Navy runs their ships and they run them hard. Yep. Next one is the Seawolf class. There are only 3 ships in that class, and they have a very specific mission and function, very unique ship. And then there's the Virginia class. That's what has taken the place of the Los Angeles class that have been decommissioned. There are planning to be about 60 of those built. There's been around 40 of them built so far, and again, they're a very advanced submarine. And then lastly, at the bottom is maybe the ones you might be most familiar with. It's the Ohio class submarine. Those are the Trident Fleet Ballistic Missile submarines. Those were built between 1974 and 1997. Those will eventually be replaced by what's in the works now, the Columbia class, which is going to be slightly larger and have much the same mission as the Tridents, to carry fleet ballistic missiles. Those should be, they're hoping to have those in the fleet by around 2030. So a little bit about the history, and I'll be sprinkling the Albuquerque's history throughout my discussion today, but it was launched in March of 1982. And then that's when it slides down the ways and gets to touch saltwater for the first time. Then it was commissioned in May of 1983. So it was 362 feet long and had a 33-foot beam. That's the width of the submarine. That's basically submarines are a big tube, if you will, with a cap on each end. This displacement was 6,000 tons on the surface, and what that means is if you took that volume and the weight of that steel that comprises that submarine, that's how much salt water would be displaced. Submerged, it displaced 6,900 tons. And the difference between those two, those 900 tons, is what's referred to as reserve buoyancy, which is going to become a very important aspect of submarining, as we will discuss. Had a crew of about 140. Those, for most ships, they'll vary a little bit. About usually won't go more than that, but could go down to like 125 or 130, depending upon how many people are off at training and schools and vacations. It was a combat veteran. It had participated in the Kosovo conflict in 1999, where it fired off 10 cruise missiles, and each one hit its target right on pinpoint. Interestingly or not, it was decommissioned almost exactly 9 years ago today. This was decommissioned in February of 2017. I'm going to be talking some also about some of the traditions that the Navy has that might be kind of foreign to the average American. A lot of those traditions date back decades, centuries, and beyond. A lot of the American Navy's traditions are derived from the French and the English. And so one of those is having a ship sponsor. The ship sponsor when the submarine was built was Nancy Domenici. She was the wife of Pete Domenici. And a Navy ship sponsor is typically a female civilian appointed by the Secretary of the Navy. And they ceremoniously christen the vessel, and they traditionally impart their spirit into the ship, and they have a long-lasting relationship with the crew. In Nancy's case, she was at the christening of the ship. She was there for the commissioning. She made several visits throughout the life of the submarine, and in fact, in March of last year, she paid a special visit to the sail after it arrived here in Albuquerque, at the age of 90, I might add. Another tradition is a ship's crest, and those are often developed by the crew of the ship or submarine when it's being constructed. There are kind of some traditional rules that go around that and how it should look and how it should be presented. But in this case, the crest of the USS Albuquerque, as you can see, it's imbued with the spirit of the people of Albuquerque and the state of New Mexico because of the colors and the designs that are included on it. The gold and red rings and the Zia, they honor the state flag. The bow on submarine image that you see in the middle serves as a warning of the ship's resolute commitment to defend freedom. And there are electron paths also in the middle of the Zia that refer to the fact that the submarine is nuclear powered. And it also includes on each side the ship's motto, which is Silentem Excubitor, which translates to Silent Guardian. Again, another tradition is often it's the commissioning crew to develop a battle flag, and this was the USS Albuquerque's battle flag. They would often fly it when they're coming into or out of port along with the Stars and Stripes, and that dates back centuries that ships have displayed their battle flag. And it's rooted in the pride and the history of the ship and the crew. In this case, again, it shows the ship's crest on the right, the name of the ship and the hull number, SSN 706, and on the left are its battle awards that it received, and also indicates the 10 cruise missiles that were fired off in Kosovo. So this was the Albuquerque's mission space. Our Earth is covered by 71% water, and that's where the USS Albuquerque operated. It operated in all the major oceans in the world, silently and with purpose. Its main mission was to maintain freedom of the seas, protect America's interests, and ensure national security here and abroad. So how does a submarine work? Believe it or not, it's not magic. It's physics, which is almost magic to me because I've never taken physics in college. But in essence, there are two hulls, let's say. There's an outer hull of the submarine, if I can get this mysterious thing to work. There's this outer hull, and then there's an inner hull known as the pressure hull. The pressure hull is where the equipment and the crew are contained. The area between those two hulls can be flooded. So in essence, if a body, such as a human body or a submarine in the water, weighs more than the weight of the water that body displaces, it's going to sink. If that body displaces less water than it weighs, more water than it weighs, then it's going to go to the surface. So all we're doing is we're changing the displacement of the submarine, of this body, by flooding this area between the two hulls, which is called the main ballast tanks. So some vents open up at the top, and there are grates at the bottom of the submarine that allow water to enter. The air escapes, the water fills it up, the main ballast tanks up, and it again decreases the displacement of the submarine, and it sinks. There are also internal tanks to the submarine and a piping system and valves that are remotely operated. And those tanks are located at the forward end or front end of the ship, the back end of the ship, and also midships in the middle of the ship, to be able to increase the weight of the submarine to finely tune the trim of the ship, the weight of the ship. The goal is to get as neutrally buoyant as possible. And a really good diving officer, like a really good diving officer, can get that really finely tuned to like 500 or 1,000 pounds of weight to where it's slightly positively buoyant. We want the boat most of the time to be slightly positively buoyant. So if they took if the planesman zeroed out the planes, and we'll talk about those in a minute, and just let the submarine glide through the water under propulsion, it would very slowly kind of head towards the surface. So just for example about the pressures that are involved, when a submarine dives, let's say it goes to, I don't know, 800 feet. At 800 feet, it's going to be subjected to about 350 pounds per square inch. And that water pressure is constantly trying to invade that portion of the hull where the people are at, the people tank. And we don't want that to happen because that's called flooding. And so often what submarines will do, they will, when they take riders out, civilians, maybe Navy League or one of the other community organizations, they'll put styrofoam cups out in those free flood areas, and you have a typical 10-ounce styrofoam cup, but when it goes to, let's say, 800 feet, since styrofoam cups are about 99% air, it's going to force all the air out of the styrofoam, and the cup on the right is what you end up with. Just as a side note, I was on a submersible that could go to 20,000 feet, which means that equates to 8,800 pounds per square inch. And this is what happens to the styrofoam cups. So slightly larger than a thimble for sewing and slightly smaller than a shot glass. So let's kind of break down what's involved here with how a submarine is designed. Oops. At the very front, up in the bow, in the front of the submarine is the sonar array. If you've seen any World War II movies or submarine movies, you always hear, like, if they're searching for something, you got that ping. That almost never happens. In like 8 years on riding submarines, I think we only used active sonar like twice or something. It's all passive sonar. It's just listening in the water. And these sonar systems are extremely sensitive and effective. You can easily hear things 10, 20 miles away, depending upon what it is. There's also a small sonar up in the sail, to the front of the sail, and also in the very stern of the submarine. Right here, there's what's called a towed array, and it's essentially a wire that can be deployed out of the back of the submarine for some distance, and I won't go into that, but it's some distance behind the submarine, and it can hear anybody that's trying to follow you. Man, I cannot get this. The operations department. Okay, so right below the sail is the control room. It's the nerve center of the submarine. That's where all the sensors are fed into the submarine. That's where you dive and drive the ship. And where the conning officer gives commands about depth and course and that sort of thing. Also where the periscopes are at. Right a little bit farther aft, is the reactor compartment. We're going to skip to that. So I'll talk a little bit about the reactor in a couple of minutes. Then every submarine in the Navy since, I don't know, the early 90s is now nuclear powered. And the Navy has been using nuclear reactors on submarines since 1954, and they've never had a major nuclear accident. The operators are extremely well trained. They go through a year and a half of training, and safety is paramount, and that's an understatement. They're constantly being trained and retrained, drilled. They have to pass oral interviews on a regular basis on reactor theory, reactor operations, and a wide range of topics related around the operation of the reactor. Behind that, man, should I get this to work? Yeah, all the way back are the main engines, and they're essentially turbines that are driven by steam that's generated by the reactor. And those turbines then spin a reduction gear and turn the propeller. Let's see. So one thing that you'll see some of these gentlemen here wearing are submarine dolphins. From the most junior seaman when they report on board to the most senior officer, when they report on a submarine, they have to qualify on that submarine. They have to relearn every major system, or learn or relearn every major system on the submarine. In many cases, you have to be able to draw it and explain how it works. You have to be able to describe where all the damage control equipment is located, fire extinguishers, fire hoses, you name it. And that's true for every member in the crew. Whether you're a cook or the new navigator on board, an officer, you have to be able to demonstrate that you know all the aspects and systems of the submarine. When I got qualified, and I'm sure these other gentlemen here will relate stories, you could be in the very aft end of the submarine, and as you're walking through the ship, and somebody will ask you, hey, where is this switch at the other end of the submarine? Tell me exactly where it's at. Or where is this fire extinguisher where are all the fire extinguishers in the control room? And you always have to know where those are at. But after going through that process, which usually takes about a year or so, depending upon how fast you learn, you are awarded either gold or silver dolphins. Gold dolphins for officers and silver dolphins for enlisted. And it just indicates that a crew member has mastered a vast body of knowledge about the ship and all of the systems on board, and also all the damage control equipment and processes and procedures. So, talk a little bit about the propulsion system. The USS Albuquerque had what's called an S6G reactor, pressurized water reactor. The S indicates it's a reactor that was designed for submarines. The 6 indicates that that's the 6th generation of submarine reactors. And the G indicates that it was manufactured and built by General Electric. There are 2 main suppliers of nuclear reactors to the Navy, and they are Westinghouse and General Electric. It provided between 150 and 165 megawatts of power, and most Navy reactors can go 15 to 20 years between refuelings. So get a lot of bang for the buck out of these things. There are 2 steam turbines rated at 35,000 shaft horsepower, and they're connected to a single 7-bladed propeller through a reduction gear. That's what drives the ship through the water. and top speed surfaced is around 23 miles an hour, and it can go faster when it's submerged because of the hydrodynamics and the shape of the hull, and it can go in excess of 25 miles per hour. And that may not seem like much, but when you're cutting through the water, it's fast. There's also a 325 horsepower emergency electric propulsion motor that's driven off of the ship's batteries. There's a large battery bank at the bottom of the submarine, and those batteries are recharged using a diesel engine. So talk about power and water and light. There's generators that are driven by the steam that comes off the reactor, and those generators provide AC and DC power to power the ship or systems on the ship. There's also an emergency diesel generator. That's an 8-cylinder. It's about the size of a small Buick laying on its side. It's a large piece of machinery, pretty heavy, and it's rated at 1,500 horsepower. And like I said, there's a battery bank, and it can be charged off of the diesel generator or off the steam-driven generators. There's one 10,000 gallon per day distillation plant that converts seawater into fresh water. A cardinal rule is all of the water that gets created, the reactor plant gets first dibs on that. Anything that's left over you can use for cooking and cleaning. For atmosphere control equipment, the atmosphere in a submarine is monitored constantly. It's monitored for carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, freon, oxygen levels, various gases that can be poisonous to our system, and also humidity. And it also, so the atmosphere is maintained pretty much like it is right here, around 21% oxygen by volume. And that oxygen is created by an electrolytic oxygen generator. All it does is you take seawater, convert it to fresh water, then you take the fresh water and you split that into oxygen and hydrogen. You get rid of the hydrogen because that's bad stuff, it's explosive, and we bank the oxygen in large flasks and bleed it off as necessary to maintain proper oxygen levels. In those banks, there's typically at least an 8 to 10 day supply of oxygen. There are 2 carbon dioxide scrubbers and 2 carbon monoxide hydrogen burners also to maintain the atmosphere appropriately. So let me take you below decks. Got a 30-inch hatch that you have to go down from the top of the submarine down into the submarine. Anything that goes into or out of that submarine has to fit a 30-inch hatch, has to fit through there. If it doesn't fit, it's going to have to be disassembled at topside, taken down, reassembled, and wherever it is you're going to put it. If there is like a major system failure or major component failure that won't fit in or out of there, then that requires that the submarine is most likely going to have to go into dry dock, and they're going to have to cut a big hole somewhere in the submarine to get that item in and out. That's an expensive and time-consuming and a little bit hazardous situation. So try not to do that very often. You can see kind of a typical main passageway there on the right. Most of the passageways are really narrow. You get a lot of body contact when you pass somebody in the passageway, whether you like it or not. And they're about 28 inches wide or so. Very, very cozy. And some of the passageways, like in the engineering spaces, they may be only like 12 or 14 inches wide. So on the left, have a picture of the control room and the periscope stand. That's, like I said, the nerve center of the submarine. It's right below the sail of the submarine, because that's where the periscopes come out of the submarine at, is up through the sail. That's also where the officer of the deck or conning officer will be when they're on watch. They are directing the movements and everything that's going on in the submarine. They've got to assimilate a lot of information all at once and be able to assimilate that and understand the big picture, and also navigate a 6,000, almost 7,000 ton submarine safely through the ocean. On the right is the ship's control panel. That's there closest in the foreground. That's where you dive and drive the submarine. One of the control stations will typically control the fairwater planes, which are those planes that are up on the sail, and may also control the rudder. And then the other control station, because there's two of them, will control the stern planes. The stern planes control whether you go up or whether you go down. The fairwater planes, the ones up on the sail, they control mostly the nose, the attitude of the nose of the submarine up and down. And on the boats I was on, they could switch that around. You could put all three onto one stick, which was a lot for one person to kind of like manage, but it was possible. Kind of one interesting thing, I always thought it was interesting anyway, was that because air and water are fluids, when an airplane banks in the air, or when it turns, it banks, right? Submarines do the same thing. When you turn a submarine, it banks just like an airplane. And most of the time, if you're just running straight and normal through the water, there's not a lot of sensation of movement. Only if if they dive or go, up or down, or you bank one direction or the other. And maybe part of that is you just kind of get used to it also. It's kind of, this is, I've been doing this for 3 weeks and I'm kind of getting used to it now. And so you don't notice any sensation of movement, but that's been my experience. Oh, one thing I forgot. Right behind the ship's control panel is a ballast control panel. That's where those main ballast tank vents are opened and closed from to be able to dive the ship. There's also controls to move water within the ship and bring more water in to increase or decrease the weight of the submarine and trim it appropriately. And there's a whole bunch of other functions on there also. As you can tell, there's a lot of lights and controls right there that that watchstander has to know if they're blindfolded. So the accommodations are pretty plush. Am I right, gentlemen? It depends on the class of submarine, but there's usually like a berthing area where there may be anywhere from like 15 to 50 bunks in that area. And they're typically stacked 3 high. So there's 3 what we call racks that you sleep in. And you can, what's cool is it's your own space. That is, nobody had better mess with your rack. That's a taboo. On the right, you can see, you can see the crew members' feet down there, so you can see how much room he has. My recollection is if I was laying in my bed and I put my arm up like this, my fingertips would touch the bottom of the rack on top, above me. But you also get a little air vent, kind of like on an airplane. So you've got your own air coming in. It's pretty nice. And all of your clothing and everything that goes in, and your toiletries and whatnot, that goes underneath your bed. It's a pan that picks up, and that goes into basically a locker that's about 4 or 5 inches deep. And if you have anything that more than that, then too bad. There's also a small locker at your feet for small items. And you can see there's like a little bag hanging just kind of inboard there. Thanks, Alan. That's your laundry. That's your laundry bag. It's where you put your dirty clothes, and you get to do laundry maybe once a week. About.
The depth of the storage area is right there.
Oh, no,
That's the depth of your storage.
Yeah, you can see how not deep it is. And I'm not sure what kind of watch rotation Albuquerque was on, but typically on the boats I was on, it was 6 hours on and 12 hours off. That might vary a little bit. It depends on how many watch standers that you have in a particular area. If you've got 4 people qualified on one watch station where you're only 6 hours on and 18 off, that was pretty sweet. But I probably spent more time 6 on and 6 off than I did 6 and 18. Port Starboard, yeah. Some boats I know are doing 8 hours on and 16 off. I'm not sure what rotation Albuquerque was on, but that's pretty standard. Kind of interesting thing also is after the hatches have closed, you've gone out, you've hit the breakwater, you've hit deep water, you dive the submarine. Pretty much the outside world doesn't matter anymore. You're in your own little world. Everything else is kind of irrelevant. And it's partly because you're doing shift work, but also you're in this tube in the middle of the ocean. Often, and time is kind of irrelevant because you really don't know if it's day or night. On some of the ships I was on, when we left and got underway, if we were going on some sort of operation where we were going to go out, be gone for 30 or 40 days submerged, and then come back to the same port, we would either just stay on the time zone that the home port was in, or sometimes we would switch to Zulu time, which is Greenwich Mean Time. It just depended. If we were going somewhere, let's say we started out in San Diego, we're going to go to Pearl Harbor, we would probably stay on the appropriate time zone as we crossed them. So every couple of days you would, change the clocks. The other thing, like back to the sensation of movement, the only other time I would really notice it is if I was asleep, and because most of the beds or racks are oriented so that your head is towards the front of the submarine. If they suddenly took a deep dive, you're on your neck because your body is sliding up against the bulkhead at the end of your bed. You guys remember this? Remember this happening?
Angles and dangles.
Yeah, angles and dangles. A couple of shots of the cruise mess. I'm not sure exactly how many seats how many people they were able to seat at one time for eating, probably around 30 or so. You can see on the left. On the right is the galley. So it's pretty small, smaller than probably most of your kitchens in your houses, but they serve probably on average 100 people at each meal, or more, maybe 120, and it's good food. Submarines have some of the best food that there is.
Other than the carriers.
Down below is another shot of another mess decks off of another submarine. I wanted to get a different angle on it. All of the benches lift up, and food is stored literally everywhere. If you're going on a 60 or 90 day deployment, you load down so much, you bring on so much food, and it's stacked anywhere and everywhere, like the number 10 cans that you have to walk through or walk on for maybe a month until you eat your way through it. Literally. But yeah, all of those benches, they lift up and food goes into those. One fast attack boat I was on, there were 3 showers for the crew, but typically, at least if we were going on a long deployment, at least one of them would be filled with eggs or potatoes or something. And I will say, the cooks on submarines, like I said, great food, because it's a morale item, right? If you're kind of locked down and you're eating poor food, that's not a good thing. But they do an amazing job. There's also one freezer box and a chill box that food is stored in, and they're about the size of a medium to large size master bedroom closet. They're not large at all. Somehow there's stuff packed all the way to the ceiling when you get ready to deploy. So armament on the USS Albuquerque, they had 4 21-inch torpedo tubes. They could carry up to 26 Mark 48 torpedoes or horizontal launched cruise missiles. The Mark 48 torpedo weighs about 3,300 pounds. It's a big weapon. They're 21 inches in diameter, 21 feet long, and they have 650 pounds of high explosive, very lethal weapon. And it's not like the World War II torpedoes. They can be wire guided, so they have a small wire that comes out of the back of the torpedo, and so it could be steered to a target. It's also got active and passive sonar. They're fast. They're really fast. You're not going to outrun one. Cruise missiles, these are horizontally launched out of the torpedo tube. They are basically pushed out by water and air out of the tube, and then once they get to the surface, the rocket motor fires off and it's gone over the horizon. Hundreds of miles away, you can hit a target. On the left, you can see they're loading a torpedo down the weapons shipping hatch, and on the right is one of those Tomahawks being launched. The Albuquerque had multi-role capabilities, could do primarily anti-submarine and anti-surface ship warfare, but it could also do covert submerged special forces insertions and deployment, as you can see there on the left. It didn't happen typically doesn't happen often. There's more boats that engage in those types of things, but almost any Navy submarine can deploy special forces. Can also lay mines, and but probably in the most recent past, the main thing that fast attack submarines do is gather intelligence, surveil whatever needs to be surveilled, and perform reconnaissance.
Terry?
Some pictures of what it's like when you do a surface transit, and I'll start off by saying probably 95 to 98% of the time, submarines are submerged. If you do let's say I did a lot of 40-day runs. I don't know, it seems like an even number. I don't know about you guys, but I did anything less than, if it was like a 10-day run, a 10-day submerged run, that was kind of like going to the corner store to pick up milk. But my longest one was 67 days submerged. Let's say it's a 40-day op that you're going to go on. If you're in Pearl Harbor, it only takes like an hour to an hour and a half from the time you throw the line, the ropes, the lines off to get underway until you're diving. And then you stay submerged and you go do your thing, and then you come back 39 days later, and again, you're only on the surface for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. So the opportunity to go up into the sail cockpit and be able to look at the skyline if you're approaching some city or port, or just be out in the middle of the ocean occasionally, it's a really kind of a special treat. There's a pretty good shot on the left of what that looks like from the sail cockpit. At the bottom is kind of like the reverse view. You're looking at the stern of the submarine, the back of the submarine, and the rudder off in the distance. You can see the stars and stripes and the New Mexico state flag there fluttering in the wind. On the right, another kind of neat treat is when there are dolphins riding in the bow wake. Probably, I would guess that probably about half, I didn't get to be up on the sail that much, but probably half the time that I did, depending upon what port we were pulling in or out of, there were often dolphins riding the bow wake. So a little more USS Albuquerque history. From 83 to 2009, they were home ported in Groton, Connecticut. Then in 2009 to 2015, they were out of San Diego. They earned 3 Navy unit commendations, 4 meritorious unit commendations, and 4 battle efficiency awards. And they were honored on 3 foreign postage stamps. And there's one there pictured. The last dive that they made was 1,075. So they made 1,075 dives over the life of that submarine. And there's one number that's missing that's related to that. And I'm going to look at my submarine friends. Do you know what that number is? It's related to the number of dives.
The number of surfaces.
Number of surfaces. The number of surfaces and the number of dives have to always equal. Thank you. There's a shot of the USS Albuquerque off of Morocco. And let's look here. So this photo brings up a couple of really important points I want to make. The first one is what sets the U.S. submarine force apart from every other force in the world. U.S. submarines are extremely quiet. The Trident submarines, the only way you can find those almost is if you look for a spot in the ocean where there's no sound. That's how quiet they are. They can remain undetected and get into just about any waters they want to get into and out of them. And remember, they're in a three-dimensional environment. You can go deep, you can go shallow, you can go below a thermocline and kind of hide out there, they're amazing. They have a long range. You can literally travel from one spot on the planet to the opposite side of the planet and not surface. They can network tactical information from other inputs, from other aircraft, from other ships, from other shore stations. So that's how part of the way they're able to target land targets from hundreds of miles away. And the last kind of force multiplier is that the crews are extremely well trained and professional. I had the honor and privilege of serving with some amazing individuals and lifelong friends and people that I'll respect my entire life. The second point I want to make about this picture is that so they're on the surface. You can tell it's a little bit bumpy. There's a little bit of ocean action going on there. Submarines are like a big log. They don't pitch up and down, really. If you're heading into waves, the waves will just roll right over the submarine. But if you've got waves coming in from either side of the ship, okay, so everybody stick your arms out like this. Okay, go like this.
Yeah.
Okay, now do that for like 6 hours. That's kind of what it's like. And so my other point is, when I look at this picture, I know that there's at least one guy on there that is not feeling very good. So we had the USS Albuquerque had 32 years of really excellent support from the city. It began when Mayor Harry Kenney offered the keys to a Rolls Royce to the first skipper who brought the sub up the Rio Grande for a port visit. And then those keys were passed on to each subsequent commanding officer at each change of command. Here's a picture on the left of some of the crew members of the USS Albuquerque, the USS Santa Fe, and the USS New Mexico at the Capitol Rotunda. And they're often invited back for visits, and the city treats them really well. You know, they really show them around. Sometimes you'll see them at the state fair. They often get, crew members will get invited to the state fair, and I've seen them there before. They're supported pretty well by the Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce and also the Navy League of New Mexico. The boat has hosted community members for rides on the submarine, and they've had 12 commanding officers, and most of them made city visits at some point in their tenure. So they have a long history of service, over 30 years. During that period, they steamed over 500,000 nautical miles during 19 deployments in every major ocean of the world. They conducted a burial at sea in 2014 for World War II submariner Jack Ballman of Albuquerque. And on the right, you can see the ship's control panel with the two planesmen operating the rudder and fairwater and stern planes. Did any of these things, did anybody see any windows anywhere?
I don't want portals either.
So one of the questions when I was getting qualified is where are the windows on the submarine? And so they'll ask goofy questions to try to trip you up. And the answer was, it was the 2 washing machines in the cruise line. Does that sound right?
There's one reactor compartment.
Oh, that's right. There was one. There was a window there.
Good.
In 2015, New Mexico Senate Memorial 12 recognized the sub's 33 years of service, and it was sponsored by Senator and retired 2-star Admiral Bill Payne. And then the sub arrived in Bremerton, Washington in October of 2015 for decommissioning, and then it was decommissioned about almost exactly 9 years ago in February of 2017. And as we know, the ship's sail was removed and it was shipped to the city of Albuquerque, and it arrived in Albuquerque in January of 2023. Since then, and the sail, it's a big hunk of metal. And I want to point out, I want to thank Alan Tate. Raise your hand, Alan. Where'd you go? Oh, he's back here. So Alan is with the Subvets organization here. He brought a scale model of the USS Albuquerque up here and a model of the sail. There's also a chunk. Is that a chunk of the sail or the hull?
The sail.
The sail. Okay, there's also a chunk of the hull, of the sail. When you get a chance, I believe it's HY100 steel, does that sound right?
HY80.
HY80 steel, high yield steel. Come up and heft that little chunk of steel, it's amazing. Anyway, the sail is 26 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 19 feet high. And the fairwater planes, those wings that stick out, stretch out 33 feet. And it weighs 52 tons. And when it arrived here, it was in pretty rough shape. But Pachetti Steel Design, they refurbished it and they did a fantastic job on it. It's currently in the city of Albuquerque storage, it's my understanding. And the city has committed $800,000 to the project for the memorial, roughly. But they're seeking an additional $5 million. So if any of you have deep pockets, looking at you gentlemen over here, with this big retirements, I'm sure the city would be happy to have you help them out to get the memorial finished. Out on the table, I brought some handouts. You feel free to take those, and it describes the memorial project. Please, like I said, please take one of those, and it kind of explains what the plan is for the memorial. This is kind of an artist's rendering for the USS Albuquerque Memorial in the area of Tingley Beach. And the long-range plan is for an interactive exhibit with the sail as the centerpiece. The city also obtained some onboard artifacts, and I'm not exactly sure where those are at. I'm looking, I don't know if anybody knows where they're at, but.
Museum storage.
Museum storage.
All by 7th Street.
7th Street?
That's where Oñate is, so why not? I mean, that's where the museum has its stuff.
And the Little
Okay.
Nuts Cafe was
All
there.
right. Yeah, here's kind of the plan that the city of Albuquerque has created for the memorial. Like I said, I've printed basically this out, and it's out on the table. If you're interested, grab one. You can also go to this website down here and find the same information. They're in the money-raising phase right now, as I alluded to be able to put the memorial together. And again, if any of you want to help them out, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. And so, farewell to the USS Albuquerque. Served our country from 1983 to 2015. And the officers and crew of the USS Albuquerque, they served our nation with honor and distinction for over 30 years, and we look forward to the dedication of this memorial. It's very fitting tribute to the military service and the Navy and the submarine service. If you'd like to get involved with any of these efforts, the Navy League is always looking for volunteers, and also if you're a submarine sailor, the Sub Vets organization, you talk to Alan, I'm sure he'd be happy to have you because he's always hitting me up about once a month. But feel free to contact any of these gentlemen. They'd be happy to help you out. I have one more thing. Let's see the video. Can I show that? Yeah. So I want to make attributions to Dick Brown of the Navy League, Damon Runyon, Mark Schaefer, and Alan Tate for all their help in helping me put this presentation together. And I've also provided information about where you can get more information on the Albuquerque Historical Society. Now I have a short video.
For more than 3 decades, the USS Albuquerque has played a key role in the U.S. Navy's arsenal, earning the reputation as the sure shooter of the fleet. In fact, the Albuquerque, which called Naval Base Point Loma home, was one of the first U.S. nuclear submarines to see combat. Now, after all those years of service, the ship is being decommissioned. Recently, I had the opportunity to spend the day on board the sub and visit with its crew, who gave me a glimpse of what life is like on a nuclear-powered submarine.
Dive. Submerged ship to 150 feet. Submerged ship to 150 feet. Dive, Mike. Dive.
When the commanding officer gives the order to dive, the control room can be a very intense place. But on the surface, a more peaceful scene. Escorted by a tug, the USS Albuquerque comes into view. Once the ship is portside, a Navy officer comes out to greet us. My crew, KUSI Chief Photographer Mike Smith and producer Doug Friedman, wait to board. A narrow hatch and a 10-foot ladder leads to the hull.
Down ladder. Tight squeeze.
Finally, our first glimpse of life on board a nuclear-powered sub. It's unlike anything you might have seen in the movies.
Con radio, receiving transmission on extremely low frequency receiver, sir.
The Albuquerque isn't nearly as glamorous, and there's a lot less room to move around. This submarine is the real deal.
Just to give you an idea how tight this sub really is, unlike a movie, A Hunt for Red October, any of the movies you see involving submarines, look at this. I'm going to stand up here just a minute. This is my foot. I wear about a 10.5 size shoe. That's the space you got in a lot of quarters down here to walk.
The USS Albuquerque is classified as a Los Angeles fast attack nuclear-powered sub. It's armed with 4 launch tubes, which can fire torpedoes and Tomahawk cruise missiles, and can operate at a depth of at least 800 feet. It's also home to 140 crew members.
100 feet. We'll be diving at a 400-foot CSOE down to 150 feet. So the dive comp is entered. So I intended to submerge the ship to 150 feet. Very well.
More than a dozen highly skilled Navy personnel carry out the commander's orders.
This is a very small craft. Wouldn't expect to be held in radar.
The guys who operate the periscopes are vital to each mission.
His job right now is to look around for contacts, be the lookout, as you would say. He's spinning around on the scope, watching for other boats, make sure we're not going to run into anything. We're also trying to get as far away from other contacts as possible.
Nearby, technicians keep an eye on these screens. They're looking for suspicious activity, both above and below the surface. On the other side of the room, a 2-member dive team steer the sub. It's almost like driving a car. Instead of looking out a windshield, they're watching the gauges in front of them. Commissioned back in 1983, the Albuquerque was considered one of the finest in the Navy's fleet. Its missions have been lengthy, Sometimes the crew didn't see daylight for several months at a time. Commanding Officer Don Tenney.
We're capable of everything from intelligence gathering to projecting power inland. When you're down in the torpedo room, you notice that we carry not only advanced capability Mark 48 torpedoes, but also Tomahawk land attack missiles. So those missiles are capable of projecting power hundreds of miles inland.
Because of her success in the heat of the battle, the sub has earned a prestigious honor among the fleet.
She's also known as the sure shooter of the fleet because she has a history of being the highest percentage of successful Tomahawk shots during the Kosovo conflict.
The Albuquerque has also been deployed in the dangerous waters in the Middle East, where tensions remain high.
We were in the Indian Ocean and in that area, but did not have to enter the Gulf. That's a very challenging area to operate in.
Why is that?
High contact density and shallow water there. A lot of people are interested in the Gulf because of the resources around that area. And so we do operate there. It's important for us to be able to operate there, but it's an extremely challenging area to work in.
But Commander Tenney is confident when the sub was called into action.
There are a lot of things we're paying close attention to, and that's one of the reasons we operate in those areas. We want to make sure that our submarines are comfortable operating in those parts of the world, so that if tensions rise rapidly, we're not only ready, but able to operate there for an extended period of time.
And if needed, they can unleash powerful weapons that leave devastating results.
It's kind of a hunter-killer submarine, so our mission is to hunt. The original mission of the submarines was to hunt out other enemy countries' submarines and track them down. They're either their attack submarines or their ballistic missile submarines, and put them down with torpedoes.
And the ship's cruise missiles can also target the enemy on land hundreds of miles away. Tomorrow night, we will hear from the crew who are assigned to maintain and launch those Torpedo and Tomahawk cruise missiles at a moment's notice. And you'll also see what it's like for the men who must sleep within just a few feet of those deadly weapons 24/7.
So months at a time they never surface. You have to wonder, how do they live
it's
like
tough
that?
because, they don't have any outside communication when you're 600, 700, 800 feet down. So that means they can't, communicate through email with their families or anything, or even with Naval Command. But aside from talking about the torpedoes tomorrow night, we're also going to take a look over the next couple of nights at how they sleep, how they eat, what they, and how they spend their spare time.
Right.
Because they've got, even though they work in shifts and they work long hours, they've still got some downtime.
It's a whole different way of life.
It is.
Fascinating.
Certainly. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Alan.
Yes.
When you're what is the air pressure? Is it 1 atmosphere?
You're a diver. Yes, inside the submarine, it's just like right here, it's 1 atmosphere, 14.7 PSI absolute. Yep. Yes, sir.
What systems does the ship use to navigate when it's hundreds of feet under the water surface?
So basically dead reckoning, but it's advanced dead reckoning. It's off of an inertial navigation system. They usually have backups on that, and that's the primary. Of course, on the surface, then if we go to periscope depth, then we can take a fix off the GPS satellites, and then you reconcile any differences, and most of the time you're going to be less than like 20 or 30 yards difference between those two. They're highly accurate.
They're phenomenal.
Yes? Commented in a housekeeping question. So the USS Bullhead Memorial Park, which is at the south end of San Pedro, commemorates the sailors on the Bullhead, which was the last submarine sunk in World War II, just like a day before or after
The day of.
Hiroshima or...
It was the day of. The day we bombed Hiroshima.
So, I just always want to, point that out. And my housekeeping question, literally, is the human waste and solid waste created, by the
Crew.
crew, where does that go over the course of the 2 months?
It goes into a tank, and then depending on the class of submarine you're on, it's they use either high pressure air to blow it over the side, or it's pumped over the side.
So it just goes out in,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
I was curious.
yeah. Yes, sir.
So I've watched and enjoyed Hunt for Red October a number of times for its fine screenwriting. But I tended not to believe that when Jones tells Mancuso that he thought he heard the Red October crew singing the Soviet national anthem from 5,000 feet away through the water. That seemed unlikely to me. What do you think, how much of that is accurate, and how bad are the liberties that they took when they made it? That fascinated me.
It's been a long time since I've seen that film. Alan, you want to chime in?
Oh, yeah, I never said it.
So, yes, actually, it is possible to hear that kind of noise at the right depth, at that distance. It is amazing how far sound travels in cold water. The problem is that once you get at a different depth, there is a change in the temperature, and it will divert it, and you won't hear it as well. But is it possible that you could have heard them singing? Yes.
Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
I have a question also about waste, but not human waste. You mentioned the production of water and that the turbine gets first dibs on the water, but how much water does it actually use? Is it not a sealed system when it's submerged, or are you actually blowing off steam?
Go ahead, Al.
My apologies for helping out here, but I operated the reactor. I was a reactor operator. And the primary loop system is a closed system. And actually, we do not like it leaking, so we watch it closely. And we don't use a lot of water for that. But there is a secondary system where we create steam. We use a secondary water system that actually generates the steam, because we do not want the primary water boiling. We want to keep it as water. So that's the part that uses the water the most. Keeping that secondary system filled, because steam leaks in the engine room are viable and actually occur all the time.
So what do you use the secondary system for?
We boil the secondary water, and we use it to drive the turbines that produce our alternating current energy. We had 2 steam turbines that were tied to generators, and then we had 2 steam turbines, as he said, that were tied, we called them main engines. They were tied to the reduction gears and drove the submarine. And that was your primary use of water.
How do you condense it? So there's a condensing system. That's a closed loop, just like a nuclear power plant.
Yes, and sir, you're asking some great questions, but yes, we had phenomenal condensers. They were on the bottom of the generators, and we cool it with seawater. We had main seawater pumps. So it was a 3-cycle system. We use the primary coolers and keep it at a temperature. We boil the secondary water off of that, and then we cool that with seawater.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
How do you balance the ship to keep it upright in the water?
How do we ballast the ship?
Right, it's not like a surface ship where you just put a weight in the bottom. Yeah?
Well, a lot of the heavier equipment is low down on the submarine. The batteries are at the bottom of the submarine. That's essentially ballast. There's also lead ballast that's loaded onto the submarine. Whenever it goes into, whenever it's being built, they determine what they call they do a weight and balance study, and they determine how much ballast they need to add onto the submarine to ballast it properly, and then after that, most of the depth control tanks and trim tanks. They're where you bring in more water from the ocean or expel it to change the weight of the submarine. Those are all down low on the ship also.
So that diagram was slightly misleading with the jacket all the way around.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The diagram that you showed us with the water jacket all the way around the hull, that was slightly misleading. It's actually at the bottom.
Oh, that'll be my homework. Yes.
Are the nuclear warheads removed when the submarine is in port for repairs, or do they stay with the submarine the whole life of the ship?
Top secret.
Most of the time, the missiles will, for like a Trident submarine, they'll remain on the ship.
Once they're put in place, that's where they stay.
Well, they change them out routinely because the missiles come off, they send them to wherever they go in the US to be refurbished because they're constantly being, they're doing preventative maintenance on them and surveillance on them to see how the warheads are aging. And so most of the time, and it depends. They may remove some of them, they may leave some of them on. Yes, sir.
There's a really cool Russian sub at the museum in San Diego. How long before you think some of these old dog subs will be in a museum somewhere that somebody can walk through?
I don't think they will. Most of them are being cut up in Bremerton.
Yeah, a key aspect of those submarines that you see in museums, they are not nuclear powered.
Yeah.
Right. They're all diesel.
Yeah.
They're all diesel.
They're all
The
diesels.
nuclear reactor compartment, and it is the entire about 53 feet long, 33 feet wide, and around 160 tons, is cut out of the submarine and shipped inland to Hanford, Washington, and stored. So you'd have to weld the submarine back together after you took that out, and that's too much energy.
The Nautilus is the exception.
Yeah.
It's nuclear powered in Groton, Connecticut.
The Nautilus, the first.
It's a museum you can tour.
Yeah,
I remember the Nautilus. I was a young lad back then, and I bought a Revell model that was very, very controversial at the time, and they withdrew it.
Okay.
You remember that?
You still have it?
I wish I did.
What you did, right?
And the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're out of time. Thank you for your attention. And again, static displays up here that Alan kindly brought in. Take a look at those. Heft that piece of steel, it's amazing. But thank you very much for your time.
I'm sorry to